Jaws and The Shining, those are two examples of my parents, the stories of their fear, the stories of, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, themselves being sort of enraptured by this feeling of fear, I think was really important to me as I was starting to realize, watching The Wizard of Oz, watching Cinderella, watching movies for kids, that I was
Mm-hmm.
gravitating to The Wicked Witch, that I was gravitating to, Maleficent. I was gravitating to the dark stuff.
I'm Luke Steinfeld.
And I'm Wyatt Sarkissian.
We made the 50/50 podcast to support you on your filmmaking journey.
50% business, 50% creative.
Every Tuesday, a new how-to.
That was the voice of our resident horror connoisseur, Nolan Lampson. It's long overdue that the writer, director, producer comes onto the pod to talk about everything horror. And with our new fall festival coming just around the bend, we thought no other person would be better to come on and dig deep into what makes us fear. As you can probably guess, it's not all playground jump scares and recess zombies with this guy. He is as driven as he is introspective. Nolan has shot up the ranks in the industry while maintaining a deep connection to his artistic instincts. Enjoy the episode.
As Luke probably briefed you, I'm a horror person first. So the idea that if you say a word 5 times and there's, really bad consequences, I think that's something that I could get into. But we won't do it. We're not going to test the fates. I'm not Arthur and Andrew. This isn't my 8th time on this podcast. I don't know what I can get away with and what I can't. So we're not going to bring in other softwares into this.
You're on a tightrope, man, already.
There's a very high bar this episode. Eli's been on the pod. Arthur and Andrew have been on. They beg every single weekend. They text us constantly asking to come back on.
Insane.
It's like unbelievable.
Would you believe I told them I was going on today, and they were like trying to figure out a situation where like the 3 of us could be on together. Course. It was like, I don't understand why.
Be honest. Are they under your desk right now? Just trying to.
They're not.
Okay.
They're not under here right now.
Okay. There was kind of a pause. Okay. All right.
It was just me checking out. Like you said, like what's under my desk. I'm like, I am looking under there. I don't see them there at this moment.
Okay.
Andrew's down there. He looks so cute.
He always does.
They heard that I was going to be on this podcast. They warned me. They converted me. They recruited me. They just every adjective in the book. They had things to say. About being on it, obviously, quick, as you know.
I feel like that's kind of what happens. It's like there's like a meeting that happens, and then you get invited to like this event, and like you show up, and it's like the festival, and then like a week or two later, like
you show up to the venue
on the podcast,
and it's Brain Dead Studios. Yeah, it's a very LA thing. Is like you walk into an event at Brain Dead Studios, and then a week later you're on a podcast, and you don't really know how to parse through like what happened to get you to that step. But it's a really important step to achieve. So I'm happy that I'm here in this place and time.
I would like to. So Luke did brief me a little bit before, and as you said, I know you're a horror guy. I know you write with Eli Staub, right? Who is a former guest of this podcast, and I've like seen your name floated around literally everywhere. I mean, John Lee,
Jesus.
Who is in your place of work. I think we've probably been on email chains together in the past, just whatever being in the sort of within the studio system to some extent.
Sure.
And it's great. Like this episode is going to be me getting to know you, because I know Luke already knows you, and Luke comes in with a specific perspective. But I am very much looking forward to this because we've floated you as a guest so many times, and it's been a long time coming, I think. So
awesome.
Genuinely happy to meet you formally and have you on the podcast.
Yeah, 100%. Same to you. I mean, I love the idea of being floated. My name's floating around.
Doesn't that feel good?
We've met or maybe not met in the studio system. It's like there's such a shadowy vibe to all of these things, right? When you first move here, and that's typically how these connections are formed, right? It's like my friend, this friend, this. I mean, and to know that I'm like probably the 8th person of my like kind of close friend group to be a 50/50 alum is feeling like that SNL 5 Timers Club. It's feeling like I got to put like a jacket on.
Dude, we're probably gonna ask you to host soon.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just letting you
Fantastic.
know
guest
about that.
host.
Yeah,
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 Luke's
depending on how
planning
this
on going a
goes.
very
Yeah,
long vacation. So if you
right.
wouldn't mind
yeah,
just subbing in for a couple
take
You
it a
get to
little.
episode
weeks.
100 of this podcast, it becomes season 2.
Yeah,
And
we could do that.
everyone has that Shogun thing of like, we thought it was just going to be one, but it was so incredibly successful
I
that
mean,
we're going
yeah,
to do 2
everybody knows
now.
it as that Shogun thing, of like
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
50-50. It could be the
yeah.
next, it could be the next
The
Shogun.
next
it's
Shogun.
it's
That's
what
it.
It
people
could
are
be the
saying.
That's
next.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
We've actually,
It could,
what's
similar
crazy, man,
budget.
is we get that a lot. Yeah, the budget. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
comps for sure.
the
Can
budget, the
you
international
give us?
travel, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Can you give us kind of the like the one sentence of who Nolan is for our listeners?
Oh my gosh.
Like how do you pitch yourself in a
Um,
general meeting? You're sitting down. What do you say?
you know, in one sentence, I think what I would want to leave with somebody is that I mean, I'm totally out here in every way, shape, and form, and went to the school that I went to, and the friends that I am friends with now, because I made a decision at a very young age that I wanted to plunge myself into making horror movies that were like just deeply dreadful and deeply upsetting. And to say that in one sentence, you also want to give the caveat of I try not to take myself too seriously. I try to be I try to be enjoyable and fun, and I try to be as not leading with I'm someone who sits inside all day and watches horror movies type of vibe, but always with the knowledge that the series of decisions that I made as a kid that brought me here and to living here and to being on this podcast and to missing the last 10 minutes of the World Cup, and I still don't know who won. All of those decisions were, I was just from such an early age so captivated by fear as an emotion on screen.
Mm.
And it's such a strange, kind of specific, visceral feeling. And so I guess in one rambling long sentence, that's sort of how I view it with a long lens of how I got here.
I think it's a beautiful way to put it, man.
It's so funny to frame it from such a young age,
Yeah.
because
And you
horror
know
to
what?
me is like something that I know my parents were like not wanting me to watch at a very young age. So like, what was your experience with horror? What was your first experiences with the genre and the feeling of
Yeah.
fear even? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's well, it's interesting. Luke and I have talked about this before, but I think the comedy kids have it easier in some way, right? That you can, because it's a very similar type of arc, right? The visceral emotion of this on screen, the excitable cliches and forms and stereotypes and all of the conventions that are a part of this genre and a part of this feeling, are so powerful and such a powder keg for me that it brought me into this life. In so many people you hear about that with comedy growing up and just like laughing as
Yeah.
deep into the night with so many friends around them as possible. It was harder for me, for sure. There was some subterfuge going on. I think my parents both kind of directly fed into this love and also couldn't really be, they couldn't know how deep it went. Like for movies when I was really growing up first, like Jaws, I heard about that from my dad, who was 12 years old and was in that first line that was wrapping around the mall, and you didn't really understand what was going on and why a movie could be so, kind of rapturous for an entire community. My dad seeing the Ben Gartner scene in the water, jumping out at Richard Dreyfuss and him spilling his popcorn on somebody. My mom going to see The Shining in 1980. She's 13 years old. She goes with her father, who is, the most like American macho 1950s, 60s idea of masculinity, and him walking out of the theater because he just couldn't stand the fear, the terror of the idea of, a man who wants to kill his family. You go back and watch The Shining, it's actually pretty hilarious. But like, you absolutely could also take it that way of like, this is for a man who's just trying to be a good father to a family unit. This is the most terrifying thing that could be shown to me right now.
It totally could be a comedy, is the thing, like just like done in a different.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember the scene? They're first going up there to the Overlook, and the kid's in the back. Danny's in the back, and he's like, when are we going to eat? I'm tired. It's kind of the primordial version of Are We There Yet? And he's talking about cannibalism and the Donner Party, and you can tell that Jack, who's driving the car, already wants to kill both his wife and his son, It's already like it's like this title cards in the movie that are like the interview, opening day, and then all the days are just like Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, and it feels like this guy's almost just kind of looking for a reason to kill his family. Which, I don't think is a comedic concept, but just the way that Jack Nicholson performs it, it's so gravely like obvious that he's not going to be like seduced by this hotel. He already
Mm-hmm.
has it in him. But just to go back to like the parents, like Jaws and The Shining, those are two examples of my parents, the stories of their fear, the stories of, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, themselves being sort of enraptured by this feeling of fear, I think was really important to me as I was starting to realize watching The Wizard of Oz, watching Cinderella, watching movies for kids, that I was
Mm-hmm.
gravitating to The Wicked Witch, that I was gravitating to, Maleficent. I was gravitating to the dark stuff, like the cut
Mm-hmm.
to the dark castle on the hill. And so my parents, telling me these stories were very influential. And then at a certain point, you drop off of telling your parents like of anything that you're watching. Once it's like the movies, when they're not Jaws and The Shining anymore, they're not movies they grew up with. It's the movies that they don't really know about. It's movies like Dead Silence that James Wan made right before Insidious. That's just like a Donnie Wahlberg doll like murder mystery odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they would love to know that that was something that I was watching.
Right. Right.
And I had two older siblings that were both playing sports and just both always, you play sports as a kid and you do it in a way now where you really want to be involved and really want to be good at it. It becomes its own little industrial complex of like all of these camps and clinics and like things you can do in the off
It's
season.
your
So it's
life.
pretty much, it's a
Yeah.
year long grind. And that just meant for me, like, okay, great. I'm going to be at home. I'm
In
not
the
going to
dark.
every game. I'm not going to every soccer game or every football
Dark.
game. I'm
Yeah.
like staying
You're
at
gonna be in the
home
dark.
in the middle of
Yeah.
the day. I'm like, hey, what can my parents not like? What
Closing
do
the
my parents not really
curtains.
want me to see that I'm going to watch, today? And that feeling, obviously, when you're feeling like you're both getting away with something and you're kind of falling in love with something, those two combinations as a kid, it's as if it's as if someone had told you that was a really impressionable adult or like older sibling, like you can't eat chocolate because it's really not good for you, but it's so like the best thing in the world. And then they dropped you off at a candy store, you know?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
impression was like, hey, remember what we told you? Like, don't don't go crazy. The
Mm-hmm.
candy store was just the availability and the wide access that we grew up with. And really like I'd be like, the three of us and our peers, we're the first generation. We're the first group where you think of something you want to watch at age 8, age 9, age 10 is right there. It doesn't take really any level of hesitation. And so that was the candy store, the availability of all of these things, the availability to go on the internet and look up Entertainment Weekly's top 500 horror movies and pick
Yeah.
one and watch it that afternoon, you know?
So when
It's a
you
terrifying
started,
concept for my parents,
yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I'm sure, and that's a
Mhm.
conversation on it and in itself. But like when you started to
Yeah.
make your own work, and you were so driven to like you had taste at a very young age, clearly. But like when you were making stuff, was there a gap for a certain amount of time? There might still be a gap, but of like achieving that fear that you were striving for, or did it come quickly and naturally?
I think there's always going to be a gap. But I mean, I'm curious, how my friends who are in the comedy scene and in the sketch comedy scene and sort of how you two view this. But again, I compare it to that. Like, I imagine you don't really start with the kitchen sink. You start with like the one joke. I think about
Totally.
this all the
A
time. I think
really
about,
small portion of whatever it is, like doing your favorite
yeah,
joke from whatever movie
I,
over and
I think
over.
about this a
Yeah.
lot. I think about the South Park joke of fish sticks and how they built the whole episode around it. Because after what I don't know, but what I assume was like one shower thought that you bring to the room the next day that becomes it doesn't start as an episode, but it envelops into an episode because it's just so funny to a group of people. I think you'd start there. In proper terms, you're 8, 9, you're making your first sketch. You would start with the fish sticks. You would start with the joke that just like is so funny that you're going to try to build something around it. You don't really know. And for me, it was the same thing with scares. I think the first stuff that I was doing was like especially with one or two friends, is like, the closet scare, the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom mirror scare, literal like gifs of scary moments, of jump scares, the
Mm-hmm.
kind of most primal version of like 1-2 packaged up. And so it would be years before I would make something. Like in middle school, I made something where it was like, the guy being me, this 12-year-old who somehow just lives alone and just has a house and like nobody is in his life, is being
Right.
mailed
Right, right, right.
VHS tapes of himself. So it was like, then
Yeah.
that becomes more of like what am I even doing? I'm in middle school. I'm doing like Hanukkah. I'm doing like something weirder and like European and like not outright scary, but like unnerving, like, and
Were
like, so
people
ideas
worried
of like
about you at all?
surveillance and being watched. And it's just like, who's watching this 12-year-old kid that lives in this normal suburban house and isn't fucking doing anything? Um, but I guess I quote unquote graduated to that, whereas definitely the first stuff that I was doing was just like what's the scariest thing that could possibly be, from that weird angle on my stairs where I can see into like 3 rooms downstairs. But if I,
Mm-hmm.
if I, turn my head a little bit, I can't see any of it. Just like, what does that blind turn reveal? Yeah, I can't believe that I brought fish sticks from South Park into it, but I
It
think that
makes
that's
sense, man.
it's an
Yeah.
apt summary. It's like, when we talk about comedy and horror as the timing, the build up, the scare, the visceral moment, I
Yeah.
think you're trying to find the purest versions of that. Um,
Absolutely.
but I would never say that I've got it. I would never claim that I'm holding onto that lightning bolt, because I just think that that's like a lifelong pursuit. And you look back at the bridge after you've crossed it and see how many times you were able to do it, and then just
Yeah.
hope, and then just
Yeah.
hope, man, that you've done it a couple of times, probably.
I'm curious because horror is so based on the relationship with the movie and the audience. What are your
Hmm.
first memories of being able to like impact audiences? Is it the middle school thing, like where your teachers like were worried about you? Like, was your family like, this is crazy what you're doing, or were your friends like, this
Yeah,
is awesome? Like, I was terrified. Like,
I think, yeah.
what are your early audience experiences?
My early audience at that time, my audience really is like whichever kids I can desperately try to rope into doing this thing. So
It's
like,
like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
come
hot
here
tip,
for a second. Come here.
100%. It's the hey, come here. Hot tip for the hey, come here when you're a kid trying to make horror movies. Zombie movies always work. Every week, because everyone wants to be running around treating their own neighborhood, cul-de-sac, whatever, like a little wasteland,
So fun.
squirting ketchup all over themselves. And guess what? They're not lying there dead. They're lying there dead for a shot, and then they get up because they're zombies.
Yeah.
So I never had a problem making, zombie movies that were just running rampant. We're all getting each other sick. We're all giving each other diseases and zombifying each other.
So
Um,
fun.
I tried to make one at school. I think I was in 4th or 5th grade, and the concept was more or less like kids are playing. You got to write to your location sometimes when you're being scrappy and when you're young. And essentially, it was kids are playing on the playground, and I just like am a fellow kid who is like bringing each of them out. I'm basically like coming in, bringing each of them out from the playground. Like, stop playing kickball, stop playing foursquare, come over here. And then I would just like burn some odd, like parasitic idea into their minds that would make them go back to the playground and like kill everybody else. So in a weird way. And then I would watch like the movie Cure, the Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie, years later and be like, okay, so I was ripping off a movie that I had not yet seen. But like, I don't think it was easy to recruit kids to be in my movie where I was pitching it and I was like, so you go away from the playground, you come over
Right.
to me. We're like playing our own game on the playground.
It's a
But
little more
really what it is,
nuanced.
yeah, really what it is I'm just like feeding some telepathic idea to you that is going to make you like a murderous person. Okay, go.
Right.
The hardest part of that recruiting process, as you can imagine, is the availability of the actors.
Absolutely.
You only have them for the
kickball
30.
is
You have them for the 30 minutes of recess, and they don't want to play with you. They want to play
right.
foursquare. They want to play kickball. They don't want to be pulled away from whatever game is they're playing. Like that, those 30 minutes are kind of all that matter to those kids. So there's another early lesson in indie filmmaking is like, you got to make things interesting for the fourth graders that you're recruiting to be in your movie. Zombie movies always work. You know, a little more slow burn, telepathic, murderous stories are harder to pitch for sure during recess.
Yeah.
Absolutely harder to pitch.
I mean, you clearly have that sense of humor, man. You know, and I think it actually works really nicely with the
Mhm.
fact of like you want to be making stuff that's terrifying to the core.
You
You
gotta
know,
lighten the like. If you were saying this
yeah,
with a straight face or no, like,
Yeah,
self awareness, it would be actually terrifying. But I think
there's
you
a
gotta
little
like,
bit.
yeah, in horror, you gotta lighten the load, in order to like just make the medicine go down easy. You know?
Yeah, I really remember a conversation that I had. We were casting the last short that I had made about 2 years ago. We shot it, um, and I was having a conversation early on with one of the actors who ended up being in the movie, and it was similar to this. It was like I want to. The actor was, I wouldn't say concerned, but the actor was interested. Like, I want to have this candor with you to go here in this movie emotionally, like go to a certain type of depth, and you know, it feels like we're talking about the subject matter with a little bit of lightness, with a little bit of like not comedy, but with like a little bit of a tonal ambiguity. And I think the way that I was trying to express it was for me, you know, this feeling, and for the audiences that love these type of movies, it feels like falling in love. It feels like laughing at the best joke. It feels like being upset by the most perfect scare. It feels like falling in love. It feels like an experience that you wish you could express and you can't. And so the only way really for me to treat that feeling and trying to give that feeling to other people and trying to make up situations in which that can even, you know, I can scare myself, um, is you want to have a lightness to it. You want to have an appreciation for it feels good to fall in love. It feels good to laugh at a joke that's perfect.
Hmm.
And it feels good to be scared at something that really riles you up.
Yeah.
You know, my first, like, I wouldn't even say it's a job. It kind of feels pathetic to say it was a job, but my first like paid gig was as a scare actor in one of these, like, it's the haunted trail is what they called it. But basically you're in Oregon. It's a giant state park. October 27, 28, 29. We're just going to host like a big kind of haunted experience. You know, people can like pay as if they're going to
So
like some
fun.
weird corn maze. And my job was just like, you know, all night, as you can
You're a
imagine,
scarer.
you're sitting in a tree and you're covered with mud and it's raining on you. This is Oregon in October. This is Oregon in literally every other time except for late July. So it's raining on you and you're going up and scaring people, coming back down. Hear the next group coming. You're going up and coming back down. And I remember being so pissed that it was just essentially a bunch of teenagers that you come up and you scare them and they're laughing. And they're laughing at each other and they're laughing to their friends and they're laughing to their girlfriends and boyfriends. And I just remember feeling like deep, like, oh man, like I did not bring it. Like I did not come to work today with like the real scare attitude,
yeah,
and the scare aptitude that I wanted. And then I think you grow up a little bit and it's, you realize what we're talking about, which is it's the same level of relief.
Yep.
It's the same level of release
It's the same
as every
exact
other
thing.
euphoric experience that you can
And also
have.
people have to laugh
Yeah,
at a place like that. If you're not laughing,
100%.
you're just terrified. You're terrified. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's the way you connect with friends. Like laughter is so contagious. And I wanted to go back for a second because you said
Hmm.
earlier the idea of I wrote getting away with something is the same as
Yeah,
falling in love with something. You know, and
yeah,
it seems like your relationship to horror is that, or like getting to scare someone. It's the same as getting to do a good joke, like you're saying something
yes,
kind of bad, maybe that you're not allowed to say day to day, but it's really well done and well crafted and you're able to pull it off. Therefore,
yeah.
you're able like that's kind of your way into it, I sense.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think getting away with it, you know, you want to be careful. Like I don't want to be a misanthrope. I don't think getting away with it means
I
pushing
think
people
pulling it
emotionally
maybe
to their
pulling it off.
limits.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it does feel like pulling it off. It feels like it's the same level of tightrope act as like being the eighth friend in a friend group that's been on the 50/50 podcast and just trying to make sure politically that you're kind of respecting everyone who's been on and
Right.
and saying, well, of course all my friends equally did well on the 50/50 podcast. You know, like
Yeah.
you want to play these things at a very high level and feel
We're
like
not
you
going
can
to be
pull it
ranking the
off.
people below in the description of
We're
like
not
how
going to be
Yeah,
well
ranking
definitely
they.
not.
the
Yeah.
people below in the
Definitely not.
description. And we're
Yeah.
also not going to do like a bonus
No,
section
definitely.
for people
Yeah.
who are asking for it that we do that. Like,
No,
and
no,
if we
no.
do, by the way, that's in the bonus. So like you got to pay up if you want that information.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Paywall.
So now you're writing scripts, man, and I know we just
Mhm.
hopped over USC here, but like I am
Yeah.
interested in and curious to know where your head's at after you're our age, like 20 years, let's say 20 plus years of like watching horror movies.
Mm.
What is your process like today? And I know Wyatt mentioned with Eli Staub and collaborating with
Yeah.
him. Can you talk a bit just about your day to day creatively? And then I know we can hop into the day to day work wise as well.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think, it's interesting. Eli and I, of course, write together and also write apart and, do so many different kind of creative endeavors. But I think writing together, um, and we've spoken about this a little bit before, but it's a similar feeling to writing alone, just in that, apropos of having someone to bounce off the idea from or not, you're really just sitting there trying to challenge yourself, in terms of like, well, what is actually scary about this concept? When Eli and I wrote a kind of our take on a space movie, a contained alien movie, it was really there was excitement about that idea, excitement about that concept, excitement in the way of, once again, like, how do we get away with it? How do we pull it off? How do you make it new? And the entirety of that conversation, it doesn't really end up being about how are we different from the ones that we love? How are we the same as the ones that we aren't trying to be like? The conversations really are just about, well, what is scary about that?
Mm.
Is it the isolation? Is it we talked about so many things. We talked about the distrust inherently of space. Who goes to space? People who are approved by the government. What is corrupt? The government. who
Right.
would send you somewhere incredibly dangerous, incredibly remote, with very little chance of survival or recourse if you don't know what to do in an emergency situation? Who would do that and then have kind of very little real reckoning of your survival or your individual, life? The government, like a big group that's trying to go there for research or for other reasons that are much bigger than you. So like those conversations, they start to sort of thread what the movie ends up being. And I think day to day, that's my process on, I want to write so many different types of things. I have, the home invasion movie that I'm doing. I have the, basketball monster movie that I wrote for my thesis in school that I'm revisiting, and everything about those stories and those concepts, you really start to thread them through. And you obviously are working on plot and you're working on structure and you're trying to build this thing. But as you're building it, really the through line feels like constantly reminding and constantly like, well, what is actually scary about the idea that, you can't fall asleep? What's actually scary about the idea that you're going to like a summer camp with your friends? Like that's the sort of primal thing you have to keep going back to.
Get in the weeds here for a second, but like,
Yeah.
I watch a lot of short films, right? Like a lot of horror shorts specifically right
Mm-hmm.
now. Like the horror festival's coming up. Like I'm watching all these submissions, and like so much of horror is sound, camera moves. How
Yeah.
much of that are you implementing into your scripts?
All of it. All of it, hopefully. I mean, the hardest thing for me and I just loved my program, man, honestly. Like coming out here for, whatever idea that was nebulous and vague of what LA, quote unquote, was going to be like. And then being in a program for 4 years that was just writing and writing and writing. And essentially, if you are not writing, or if you're not writing with a lot of attention, you're going to come to class for 4 hours where we talk only about the writing and you're going to get flamed. And sometimes you're going to come in thinking you did really, really great work. And it's that same thing of like, oh, I really brought it this time. And like, I really, I convinced my friends to make the zombie movie this time with my pages. Like, I really feel like I pulled it off. And you would still get eviscerated because people didn't
You're
get
still
it.
that kid on the playground,
100%. You're always, especially as a writer, and I have much more experience in writing than I do in directing. Writing is the kid on the playground.
Yeah.
In all senses, in the selling or the attempted selling of the work, of the attempted, monetary elements of the work, of just continuing that, trying to convince people this is the one. And maybe like I bring one person from the Foursquare, I bring one person from Kickball, I bring one you know, it shows you how little I know about traditional recess. I just keep naming Foursquare and Kickball. I'm like, there's nothing else that you can do
Yeah,
at
you're like stuck
recess.
in the 80s, dude. I don't know
I'm
what.
Yeah.
stuck in the 80s. I'm stuck in the 80s and still trying to recruit kids to be in these horror movies with me as a fourth grader.
I love
But
it.
yeah, I think really that program, one of the great lessons of that is you're coming in every week and you either have pulled it off or you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of that dividing line. It's a tightrope that seems kind of gray, but it's really black and white. It's like you've showed up and either people are moved by it or they're not. And I just think that conceptually with horror and thriller, which was not all that I was writing in school, but really with the horror and thriller ideas that I kept coming back to, the only real way to know if you're pulling it off is you're trying to bring in sound, you're trying to bring in image, you're trying to, as much as possible, you know, whether you're the type of person that announces on the page insert, or you're the type of person that announces the detail of what we're seeing, which sort of keys you into the fact that this must be an insert if this is how it's
Mm-hmm.
eventually depicted. Like, and I really tend to be more of that. I try to dance on
In the
how
description.
might if you were to shoot this, might it sound and look, without trying to be the guy that's
I'm
like,
not directing, but
insert,
Giving
I'm
little
not directing on
hints.
the page, I'm not going to do it. But
Yeah, right.
if you don't do it in a medium shot, like, it's just, what are we seeing, you know?
Yeah.
I think you try to get away with that as much as possible, because that's really like a trial by fire weekly class period way. It seems so juvenile, and of course it is. It's a class, but like, you had to know every week whether you were pulling it off or not. The easiest way for me to feel that in horror was, are people, when they're reading it, feel like they're watching it? And when they feel like they're watching it, are they scared? Do they feel vulnerable? Do they feel alone?
Yeah.
You know, the fun questions that you want to ask other people. And it's so funny, you know, we're taking smoke breaks halfway through the class on the balcony. You know, we're going down to the coffee bean and like whatever, you know, and I'm just trying to see like whether this worked on these people. And they're trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to suss each
like
other out.
how many cigarettes are they smoking after this?
100%. Yeah. Are they
Yeah.
like really
Right.
trying to huff their
How
way
many
through
do they
this
need?
period? Or,
Yeah.
yeah, like and of course, everyone's doing that to each other in this program. We're all trying to figure out whether whatever emotions we were building up for the last week are
Yeah.
working on other people.
It's
But
all
of
you care
course,
about. Like if you're in a
but you're the
class
kid
with
on the
10 people,
playground. Like, you
yeah,
can't
it's
just
all
ask
you care about.
people. Yeah. You're the kid on the playground. You're just trying to suss out whether people are enjoying being on the monkey bars with you. And just
You
Totally.
asking feels like
Your
you
feels
class
got to
like a
is
chill
your
with
lot.
the
audience.
no, and you got to chill with the playground references, dude. But let's
I'm done.
the
I'm done.
yeah,
I'm
you're
done
done.
being the former fifth grader trying to get
Yeah.
people in my zombie movie. It's
Um,
over.
you, as you've said, you came up watching a bunch of horror movies. Did you spend time
Mhm.
reading horror scripts? And if you did, were there some that were instrumental or certain writers for you that you returned to that have like, oh, I like how he or she kind of alludes to this, and I implement that in my own writing.
I think I wasn't reading a lot of horror scripts. Occasionally something like Alien or Halloween, you know, kind of like the big marquee classics, just because the scripts were so available. I was just trying to see how, especially Halloween, it gets so nonverbal for like, you know, an hour section of just watching The Shape, or watching Michael Myers, that you're at least interested in how that looked on the page. Um, no, a writer that I really keyed in on growing up was Shirley Jackson. And I just really, and I still do, I really, really found myself in these, you know, descriptions of social deprecation, isolation of different types, you know, if whether it's the lottery, where, you know, everything goes really well in this village all the time, except for one single thing, one single ritual that they have that's like destructive and terrible. The summer house, right? Which is, you know, a couple moves into a place and it's a pretty quaint village and everyone's kind of nice, but they're all kind of holding something back, like these very simple domestic situations. You know, I found myself in love with the way that Shirley Jackson could describe how little by little by little, these entire situations would just tear people asunder. And those horror movies, Hereditary being, I think, the most modern recent example of like I mean, obviously, these are giant operatic, melodramatic sequences of people getting their heads twisted off. But in the beginning, the very little details
The
and the
subtlety of it all.
small life
Yeah.
circumstances that build you to this just giant kind of emotional glaciation is really beautiful. And you see it. I
Do
mean, you go to
you?
Cannes Film Festival, like you'll see
Uh huh.
half the movies at Cannes are basically that. It's like European families. They're all on a farm. Oh fuck! Like there's no harvest
Yeah.
this year. How is everyone going to react to the situation? And everyone's going to be dead by the end. You don't know, but that's the joy of
Do
the
you?
European festival movie.
Do you watch short films? And I'm asking this because the state that horror seems to be in as a genre, and I was just talking about this with my
Yeah,
girlfriend, but like
yeah.
short films are so seem to be very, very important for
Hmm.
horror filmmakers, like writer
Yeah.
directors. Um, do you watch short films? And if you do, what about certain shorts stand out to you that like separate them from the rest?
You know, it's I don't watch as many as I should be or like used to when I was a kid. Part of it was, you're just like scariest horror shorts. It's amazing what YouTube can bring you, right? When you look up scariest horror shorts. And obviously that's still true today and was very true when we were growing up. The ones that affect me, I always felt like, and it's hard because I'm making them and I'm not even sure that I'm making them in the way that I personally would be affected the most just because I think I'm still learning and I'm still growing. But um, you go to David F. Sandberg, who for me is the patron saint of YouTube horror with Lights Out and Cam Closer and, Coffer, which is about a table. I mean, this guy's making 3.5 minute shorts about haunted tables in your living room. Like the ones that and Closet Space. What do you think Closet Space is about? Like he casts his wife in all of these shorts. She's either going down the hallway and turning off a light switch, or, she's discovering that like, oh, did someone leave something down there in the hall, and now I have to go down and figure out like they are the most simple domestic situations
Yeah.
that you can ask for. Um, and I don't know really truly what the alchemy is to making those the scariest, other than to say that they stand closest to, I think, like our idea of that pure fear. Lights out as a concept, right? The light is off and somebody's there, it's back on. There's not, I don't even know how to start processing that. I almost want to go into like a invisibility, like academic sort of idea of the double or whatever. But like we just know that there is something unnerving in it. And it's so simple and it plays on such obvious primal grounds. It's that itch you can't scratch. It's that pop song you hear that you're like, well, I know nothing about music, but I just feel like I feel like I should have come up with that hook. It's so clear. That's still the stuff that gets me. I think most people now, of course, in the wake of what's happening in the horror sphere, have probably caught on to The Other Side of the Box, that horror short. I think that's very similar. That's a filmmaker that has time and time again, particularly with Other Side of the Box, it's a face coming out of the box. It's just like the creepiest single image you could think of, in a YouTube thumbnail, and I don't think that's how it starts. I don't think people are thinking thumbnail outward, but certainly you're trying to distill and distill and simplify, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's always going to be what wins out. But curious how that leads to the commercial viability of how many people try to then make feature length films from those simple ideas. Some of them remarkably work because of their simplicity. Some of them flame out
Aren't enough.
remarkably
Yeah.
because of their
Yeah.
simplicity, because they don't
Right.
work for 95 minutes. And,
It's
I,
so
I think,
interesting, man.
and I think we're going to spend our whole lives trying to, isolate and assert and prove why some work and some don't in that jump, in that transition. But it's part of that strange alchemy of what is scary and for how long. And, it's the exciting thing that we basically are bumbling idiots who don't know what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Like that makes you kind of want to keep guessing and keep watching and keep creating to just try to figure it out. If you could ever
Yes.
figure it out, that would
That's
be
the struggle.
such an
You
amazing
can't.
thing.
There's no formula to it. It's all
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's the same
Well.
thing as falling in love. I keep trying to come back to that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
falling in love with comedy, falling in love with horror, you're never actually going to be able to sit there and describe it.
Totally.
I
Totally.
mean, what's the closest someone's gotten to describing comedy? Probably like a Mel Brooks memoir.
Right.
And he's just funny. He's just
Yeah.
funnier and smarter than you, and funnier and smarter than all of us. And so even he could not,
Yeah.
try to come up with whatever it is that makes it tick or makes it work.
Well, very, very well put. I love thinking about the simplicity of it all, and Luke and I think, come from comedy a little bit more, and we think about it in the same way. I would say, especially
Mhm.
coming, 50/50 started as a sketch festival, like,
Yeah.
really coming from that simplicity of like, here's a joke, and how many times can we do the joke in different ways, and then
Yeah.
flip it on its head in the end. Um,
Right.
I'm I'm curious, if we can sort of bring it back to you as a writer and as a professional. I want to talk about
Mhm.
like after that program. You
Yeah.
find your people, you find your playground audience, you find your collaborators.
Now you're bringing
What
the playground back in.
I know, well, God,
Luke's
I had to
shaking his
call it
head. He
back.
can't
I
believe
had
it.
to call it back. Luke's freaked
Yeah.
out about that. We found Luke's
Yes.
fear, by the way. That's yeah.
Luke's
Something
fear.
traumatic happened there.
Luke was also the kid on the playground. Now that we think about it,
I was
I
I was
was
on the
at a
playground
time.
with him.
Hey man,
Trust
we
me.
all were.
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
all
Yeah, yeah.
were. But that's
we
why
all
we're
were.
here on the 50/50 pod. We were
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
kids on the
Yes.
playground. Yes,
Um,
100%.
the 50/50 playground. That's not a
I
bad
honestly
idea,
love
Luke.
that.
Luke,
I
write it
do love
down.
that.
Write it
Yeah,
down.
I am. I already wrote
That's
it
what
down.
you
We can
call
I'm
the
start
actually
award
training
show.
the
recording this.
kids. We
Yeah.
can start training the kids early to, we bring film equipment on. It's like a film
I
camp.
love
We
that.
talk about that.
Yeah.
But bringing it back to you, Nolan, I want to talk about like the post grad years, because
Mhm.
a lot of our audience are people who are just starting in film and currently in
Yeah.
film school, or currently in school and like want to get
Right.
a film education somehow. So I'm curious, what did it look like for you, specifically like getting into the professional world? Luke
Mhm.
has tipped me off that you have, you do have a specific like writing routine, and you try to stick to things. So I want to, talk
Yeah.
about it in a sort of tangible sense. What do the post grad years look like for you?
Yeah. Well, my college experience, in addition to the writing program, was really, that first sun hits you in LA, and it's beautiful at 7:30 in the morning when you first wake up on your first morning after having lived there, and it's like, oh, I really don't know anybody. I really don't know anything, which I already sort of knew that I didn't know anything. And now I know that I don't know anybody. And so I think from the moment I started the program, you're just meeting fascinating and brilliant people day after day. And I really tried to supercharge that with kind of outside work experience and internships. And I was definitely one of those kids where it's like, okay, the internship is 2 months. What's going to come the next? It's a bit of like, I'm just
You're
trying to see
stacking them.
how
Yeah.
much in 4 years. Stacking is one way to put it, and it's a little bit like, in 4 years of being here, I want to stack everything as much as possible. I want to stack experiences. I want to, you don't want to stack people. You don't want to stack relationships. You don't want to stack things that are sacred to you, obviously. But the idea of, working at two different places that are completely separate in how they view the projects that they're making and how they produce them, how they go about actually tangibly making them, while being in my program, while trying to also go to football games or improv shows or whatever these other, collegiate things that you're doing. Like, you get in a period where it's just a frenzy and you're trying to try and discover so many new things. And
Yes.
so, in that way, I graduated in 2024. For kind of 3, 4, 5 semesters, probably 2 years or so, have gotten used to a sort of cadence and routine of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing and I'm working, I'm like developing professional relationships, I'm going back to school, I'm commuting to different places every day, whether that's like the place that I'm interning at or it's like going to school. Like, so, I had at least some idea when I graduated of the balance and the time commitment difference between your creative work, your professional work. And, I think really what I thought, my conception of graduating and of entering the professional world was, hold on tight, because every alum that I've talked to, not every alum, but many of the alums that I've talked to, many of the people that are talking to me that are in, position 3, 4, 5 years out from me, are warning. They're proselytizing. You're going to lose your writing time. You're going to lose your writing time. This is going to eat away at it. This is going to eat away at it. You're going to lose the time that was, previously sort of mandated as a college student in a writing program. you're going to lose the impetus of people telling you. This was the biggest thing. The people telling you you've got to turn in work, the actual deadlines, however you took those in college. Some people never cared. Some people treated them as the doctrine, like as the only thing that, was close to the same level of, strict achievement in high school, carrying that over to film school. It's like, well, you can turn your work on time and it can be good. And that's kind of, you're going to get an A either way if you try. So anyway, but I think that was my conception, was all this time is going to be taken away from me. So I'm going to have to like really fight for it and really try to secure what my idea of writing time is like in a professional postgraduate landscape. And I think that it's true and it isn't. It is literally, you have less people around you telling you to work on these projects, less than you had in film school. Always going to be less than you had in film school, because there were professors who were hired to tell you to just like keep moving, keep working on the thing. But I think my having to fight for the time wasn't necessarily true. It's more that I've, you philosophically set out to write a certain amount in a certain amount of time. I find that you get there. It's similar to college in that way. I was not writing 5 pages a day every day and coming to class once a week with the 25 pages or 35 pages, I guess that would be the math of what I'd been writing, leading up to that week. It was a lot more of stop start. It was 1 page here, 1 paragraph here, 1 line here. Okay, wait, that sounded like I'm trying to direct on the page. I got to take that back. 4 pages here. This is getting really misanthropic. This is not what I want to do. This is too dark, actually. I want people to have fun while they're reading this. You kind of go on and on and on. But the important thing was, every day I'm going to be there. Every day I'm going to show up and try. And every day I'm going to attempt to write, whatever it is I think I can get done that day. And for the most part, that's still true, and I've never been dogged or hard on myself about it's got to be every day. It's got to be 3 pages. It's got to be at this time of the day. But the routine that I have, quote unquote, is that I just get guilty after 2 or 3 days. I find that I'm getting, and it's a little bit for me like how some people feel, I guess, about like working out or being athletic or things that I have no idea about. But like when people get that, like, dude, I haven't like lifted in 3 days, like it's like starting to affect you emotionally.
It is that. I would say
you're starting to, and you would know, because like you're working out all the time. But for someone like me who's like never been to a gym, the only way that I experience that is the weird like shame and guilt that comes from nowhere, other than I guess you're kind of bearing it out yourself of like, I want to sit down and just try it. And so inevitably, I don't know what my page count looks like per week. I don't know what the metrics kind of eke out as, but it's that same chase that I had in college of like, I know that I'm working. I know that I'm going to class. I know that I have all these different things. If I can at least shame, guilt, joy cycle of getting myself there every day and just trying and seeing, some days you're going to have the 1 line that's just too editorial and just doesn't work. Some days you're going to have the 4.5, 5 pages that you feel like really work. You really feel like you're pulling it off. And I think that in the aggregate, once again, it's hope. It's hope that after a month or 2 of doing that, you've got a draft. And then after, 2 weeks, you can put it away and work on something else, come back after it, a month and a half later, there's another draft. And, piece by piece, you're just, again, trying to build these things with as much of, is it still hitting the same nerve that I thought was scary or funny or interesting or romantic about this idea in the first place? Is it still doing that? And that's just a daily process.
We'll be right back.
I want to play like a scary song from like a horror movie before this, but all the copyright stuff. So I can't, but imagine there's like a scary song playing right now and it's like, oh, the 50/50 Horror Festival is coming up. You need to submit your short film soon by August 7th. August 7th is the deadline. You have 2 months to submit your short film. You have 2 months. And then after that, there's another deadline.
Read it here first. Submit now. Submit now, if you dare.
No, but for real, we have our horror festival coming up in October. October 18th is the actual day. Get your short in by August 7th if you want to be a part of it. We look forward to viewing your submission on Film Freeway. 50/50 horror. Those are the numbers. 50/50 horror.
So then on the other end, you got it. You're still living in LA. You got to somehow pay for things and work in some way.
Right.
Like, are you doing the thing where you're taking hours to write every day and working at a coffee shop, or are you looking to get a job in the industry, which is how you progress professionally in a lot of ways, but also can be way time consuming and exhausting and all the things that make it and give a lot of creative energy over to that. So I'm curious, like, what your mindset was like heading into that part of the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I had a dual mindset when I graduated, which was immediately I want to get a job and make money and be able to pay for my rent, et cetera. And so very, very, very much, I don't want to downplay that. Like for me at least, like I wanted to, as I had been in the previous years, working in a development, production, film industry capacity. And it's
just through
it's
internships,
a hard,
right?
Through internships in college. And it's
Right.
such as you guys know, and everyone listening and anyone who could ever associate this podcast understands it is a hard wall to climb. It is a wall that they make it really hard to climb. It is a wall that they make you email and call and push and push. And, you have to be a Luke and Wyatt of the world and be able to send 500 cold emails. And truly, when you go to sleep at night, expect 20 responses from 500 emails. That's the sort of understanding you have to have. So, as I'm graduating, I understand and I remember from trying to scramble and obtain these internships and this work experience, I remember what that is like. Like it's a hard wall to climb. So I have that instinct. And then the other feeling I'm having as I'm graduating is, you know what? I was in the writing program and so I never made like my short. Like I just watched all of my, I live with still, many of the people that I lived with in college, and they're all incredibly talented filmmakers, and they were just shooting and making films. And I was over here writing and loving it. But I was like, I never made my USC short that's maybe a little bit too long and like maybe a little bit too expensive for like what we have. And like I made people like sit around eat Chipotle every day. Like I never did that. So I need to do that before everyone goes off and gets their own, before we all go off and live our lives. And it's really hard to do this again. It's really hard to, I'm going to bring it up one more time, get other people who are playing Foursquare on the playground to join you in making something. I'm going to try that as soon as we graduate. So that's actually what I did. The first thing really that I did after graduating was we shot the film, Your Presence is Requested. And we had 2 weekends, and it was about, 5-6 weeks of the prep and casting of that, really straight after graduation. You're also moving out of your house or your dorm. You're going to the graduation ceremonies. Your parents are like, okay, now that we've been scared that you're not going to do anything with your life, now we're really scared that you're not going to do it. There's a lot of stuff that you're dealing with at that time.
Scared. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. My parents are like, we're concerned. We're worried. We're in agony over your future. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like that's good. Chase that.
Yeah,
feeling.
I like that. Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, it's a powder keg. It's a powder keg. Like it doesn't feel like falling in love,
scared.
like being scared. 100% like how I would talk to them about that. But no, it's a lot going on at that time. And so working on the short was sort of its own distraction. And then certainly, the quote unquote come down like you have on any, post-production scenario right after you've shot. And, our crew and our cast just became so tight knit. And our cast is still, I love them. They're still like a tight knit group that talk to each other 2 years after we've shot it. And that for me, emotionally, having finished this movie, being exhausted, is mixed in with just remembering how hard it was to land an industry job and get your footing and, start anywhere and get any foot through any door. And I was like, my feet are tired after 4 days of shooting and not being able to sit down. Like, I don't know how I can kick those doors down again. So that was a long process, I think, through the summer after graduating of kind of getting back into that professional mojo. And at that time, the writing is just, the writing is 100% secondary to landing the job. I think I want to be clear that as I am writing, and that's kind of my creative life, and then I have my professional life, I was never taking for granted the idea that I could live here and have a professional life that paid my rent and was able to keep me here. Right. And so in the scenarios in which I was looking for work, writing has been secondary. And I'm proud to, say that and espouse that and to give that advice, or to just say that as a blanket, like that is what I did. Like I 100% treated being back in that professional world and getting that job as the most important thing at the time, because it's what pays, for the things that you want to do in your life. It's what keeps you here. It's what making going to a coffee shop on a weekend, or waking up before work, or getting home after work, or spending, some time not really watching the World Cup final, but kind of watching it, but it's like 0-0, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm just here writing. Like all of those experiences come from being able to stay here and be kept afloat. And so I want to emphasize that, as like, as I was looking for work, I was not going off and writing every day, or going off and making films every day and just like hoping and seeing, and maybe there's a job out there somewhere. Like it was a full-time climb, and it was an exhausting climb. And it is every time when you're young and you're trying to get a job in the industry. And so I treat that with the, respect that it deserves, and really, knew that if I land XYZ job, then I'll be able to get back into the flow and be able to edit the movie that I just shot and be able to write. And those things I did do and have done and are still doing. But I think the priority of, if you want one of these jobs, you really have to fight and really put everything aside to get one of them. 100% my philosophy. And I don't see how, if you continue to want to work in this industry in these capacities, I think that's just still going to be true.
I agree. You gotta, there are times, and this isn't a piece of advice I give to people who are like in that process of looking for a job. Like you can do a bunch of interviews, get to first round, second round, all of that.
Yeah.
And there are times in those processes when you really want something where you kind of have to just put all your eggs in one basket. You have to call on every single person to swarm the person you want to work for with, why it's the best. You got to work with what, like all you need and you can only use those favors and those resources so much. Like it's such a delicate balance, but I always am just like, you're going to know it when it's that job, when it's that job that you're a finalist for, that you just have to like push. And even if you don't get that, your pushing helps you in so many other ways, because it gets you back in touch with everybody who you rely. Like there's just, and that person's going to remember you. Like
100%. The best thing to really ever, especially for the kind of interning or the still in college, the best thing you can do, I always felt, you're in college, you're writing 500 cold emails, you're expecting 30, you're not sleeping, you're drinking up, all night. You're crazy when you're in college. You're feral. You're just trying to see, once again, what you can kind of get away with.
You're pushing the limits.
How far you can go in this industry. And so I think, like you said, the best thing, or one of the best things you can do, you get that first internship rejection. You get that, like, hey, we know that you applied online to the Fox Entertainment internship, and 8 months later, here is a kind of automated robotic response saying you didn't make it. I always responded to those, whether it was a human HR person or whether it was an actual automated bot that was never going to see my response, just because that habit of like actually saying, you know what, thank you. You know what, thank you.
It's a small industry that's always going to help. It's always going to help. And then 2 years later, when you're an assistant emailing someone from that place, they'll be like, oh my God, like I remember, there's always going to be points of connection. Just like simply educating yourself on all these companies, going through an interview process. Like then you kind of know the ins and outs of what a company is about to some extent. Yeah. And then eventually when you're working at a new place, you'll run into that. Like everybody is working with each other. So
absolutely. And I would say, to your point earlier, it's always going to be a factor of like how deep are your resources, quote unquote, and then how far can you play your cards. And I always felt like, and people rightfully so can feel strange or a little bit weird about like my friends versus my connections. I don't want to feel like I'm ever using people. I always felt like Man, it really comes down to like 8 to 12 people. This is really what I realized with the internships, right? I was working constantly for 2 years and realizing, oh, every really like internship experience I've had, I've loved the people I've worked with. I think they're all brilliant teams in different ways and doing so much different work. But I'm coming out of these experiences with really like 2 to 3 people at every place that I've
Same.
worked that are
Yep.
just like, and and these 2 or 3 people, it's like they're not even just the 2 or 3 people that I
Oftentimes
can
they're
stand.
assistants, right?
Yeah, it's
I
the
was,
two or three
yeah,
people that
that's,
we can just
yeah,
talk about kind of anything. We could go on a hike
totally.
this weekend. It'd be fine. It'd actually probably be even good. Like it'd be great, you know. And so
Right.
you do that for a while, whether that's the internships or whether it's other outreach programs or whether it's clubs at your school that correspond to films and filmmaking and TV like whatever it is. I always found if it feels strange, and it kind of does, and it always will, to send 500 cold emails. These are 500 people you do not know, you know? There's always the other side, which is there's like after a little bit of not trying too hard, 12 to 15 people that anytime, anywhere, you can call upon them. So it's like while resources are thought of as precious and the amount of times that you can ask for favors seems very dire, and people have this whole like almost like smell of desperation that they're trying to avoid from themselves, from others. There's always for each of us, I think, a dozen or so people. And if you have more, like many, many, many congrats. But if there's 10 to 12 to 15 people, somewhere in that range, somewhere in that perfect baker's dozen range of people that you just feel like anytime, anywhere, about anything, about any doubts, about any opportunities, about any job prospects, about anything, I can call and ask you. I can text and ask you. Like that is what makes the walls that are hard to climb easy to knock on. Still hard to climb, but easy to get to the wall and knock on it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's really like there are deep relationships that you make that early on. Are they mentors? Are they just really good friends? All of that can be sort of sussed out and figured out later. But what matters now is that you're early in your career. You're looking for champions. You have them. You may not have many. They might not even be powerful. Like you said, they might be mostly the people your age that you just got along with.
Yeah.
But you have people who champion you. You have people that are, for some reason, on this world, floating your name around the 50/50 podcast verse. Like these people are your champions. They're your friends. And I think that is what makes this whole, not only the whole industry run, but it makes you in your early career trying to define yourself also and how you are getting these certain types of jobs. Like having that community is, up in front for you is really, the biggest, I think, defining factor.
Well said, man. You're very good at talking, Nolan.
Man, on a
Yeah.
podcast,
Luke, we
you're
got
good at
smart,
talking.
dude.
we got the
I
horror
really
guy
brought
to
it. I
we got
really
the
brought
horror
it
guy
today.
to
I was
be
like,
nice.
I'm gonna have to
It's
talk
great.
for.
He's not
Yeah.
too scary.
No.
Oh no,
Really
never,
not. Yeah.
never. Well, that's the other thing is like, if I wanted to be like a horror figure in the like mercurial way, like I'd have to be really, really good.
Right.
Like the risk of being like dark and stormy all the time is that you better bring it every time. And I've
Right.
experienced enough weeks in the writing
Dude, it's
program and
that's
enough writers
exhausting.
groups.
It's
Yeah.
exhausting, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
it's a
be
whole
to just be
character.
great all the time
And
and then
again,
have to
it's the
put on
same
that
in comedy.
character.
It's like
Yeah.
like the biggest comedians are usually not
Who wants to be funny all the time? It's
clowns
exhausting.
24/7, you know?
100%. You got to go up there.
Exactly.
You got to be willing to know that it's in your capability. In fact, it's within your rights to bomb. And like that, I think that freedom is what allows you to be good. But I mean, I don't know anything about being funny, but like that's what I imagine is you go up there, you're like, this could go really wrong. And that's when things can start to go right for you, is when you have that acknowledgement.
So then what is the dream for you?
Writing and directing and producing horror movies in no particular order, making movies that are scary to me and that I hope can be scary to other people and that can move them in the way that they feel like they're falling in love, in the way that they feel like they're laughing at the funniest joke, in the way that they feel like they found the perfect scare. And chief among that for me is writing, just because that was kind of the first love. And that was, where I found myself really being directed at school in the writing program. Everything quote unquote starts with the script. Of course, we know that that's not true, especially in horror. Now you can start with a short. You can start with the concept. But still, I think that beauty of whatever you want to call it, the unwritten page, the blank page, the empty page, you can get more existential with it as you describe it. The page half full is what you can also say. But I think that the dream is staring at that blank page and writing something really scary. Being able to do that for a very long time is definitely the goal.
Love it.
I love it, man.
And now it's 50/50 After Hours. It's so funny you say that, because when you were talking about like the jump scare, I think you were even talking about your parents or something, like with Jaws or The Shining or something like that.
Yeah.
But I saw The Odyssey yesterday, and I got, and I'm gonna get into the nitty gritty here in this story. I got Sour Patch.
Yeah.
A Coke Zero for my girlfriend and a bottle of water. I did this because I was going on a run after the movie. It was a daytime showing, so I was like, if I have like candy and water, that's like fine to have before a run. A little sugar,
like
loose carbs.
Yes, I mean it is carbs. Like that's good.
Right?
Carbo
Yeah.
loading before the race.
Yeah, exactly.
That.
Yeah. But I was like, because of the IMAX sometimes like gives me a headache, and I was just like, I am getting a migraine right now because I'm like wolfing down sugar and staring at this screen. So I left the movie about an hour and a half in to go get coffee because I know they have black coffee at AMC.
Yeah.
And I get up to the thing, A-list, of course, hold for applause. Thank you. I go into the A-list line, and the guy is like, yeah, I think we still like, clearly nobody orders black coffee at AMC.
Right.
And he goes, okay, like, do you want to use your reward? $5 reward, sure. And he says that'll be $4.99. I'm like, are you charging me $9.99 for a black coffee? I didn't ask them that. I just paid for it because I'm like,
you knew by the mathematics of the situation.
I'm trying to get back to the movie. So
you don't have to. This is literally the like biggest story ever told in all of humanity. You got to get back, and you can't be thinking about this coffee price.
Exactly. I go to the pickup line. He's like, wait for the pickup line. I'll make it for you. He literally like a 2010 Keurig. He like puts a little pod into the thing. Like I watch the coffee get made. Then it's like steaming. I wait for 5 minutes for him to get it. He gives it to me. I get back into the movie. I sit down, and there's something in the Odyssey. I can't remember what it was, but there was a jump scare. And my girlfriend goes like this to me, and I spill the hot coffee all over myself.
There's a nice big jump scare in there. I'm glad to hear that you got, as we talk about like the timing and the buildup, I'm glad to hear that you experienced like pretty much none of the buildup that led to the jump scare. You
just
like
the worst part of the jump scare. Everybody completely just like flailing, and I spill hot coffee all over myself. It was fucked up. Anyway, that's my story.
I'm going to bring up a movie now that is the last horror movie to really viscerally upset me, that I think when I saw it about 2 years ago, I was like coming out of the theater, like, this is the scariest movie I've seen since Hereditary. Like, it's been 6 years. I think I'm ready to say this is the one. You're coming back to your parents and your family and Thanksgiving, and they're like, well, what's been going on in your life? And you're like, well, I think I really found the one this time. I really found the horror movie that's scarier or as scary as Hereditary. Like, and everyone's like so happy for you all around the table. It like becomes the biggest thing of the holiday that year. And they're like, when do we get to meet this movie? Like, are you going to bring this movie to the family gathering?
Of course, for Thanksgiving. It's a big deal.
You're going to, you're going to love the movie. Like, they're great. The movie is Smile 2. And I love that we're talking about jump scares because of all of the kind of conventions and things that we talk about, like, the even the rule of thirds, right? Like the joke is best on the third punchline. All these things that after 100 years of seeing them on film or so, like we start to develop our own little guidelines, conventions around. Horror fans, as you can imagine, like are very, very suspicious and leery and worried when it comes to jump scares, right? Because we've seen it done enough in a way that has, so little respect and so little build up and so little, I guess like, the
lame
timing,
excuses for jump scares.
The timing, should you botch it, makes a jump scare, the least effective and sort of like, it's the joke that instantly goes sour. It's just like the pathetic thing you feel like you have to wash off. And yet, on the flip side of that, when you have South Park fish sticks, when you have the jump scare that was treated with respect and treated with fun, I
Yeah.
actually don't think there is anything like it in moviegoing. And I think that Smile 2 is a great example of that. As a movie that is essentially, and I don't want to conceptually turn anyone off from it. I'm telling people it's so scary. It is conceptually basically one long nightmare sequence full of jump scares. So for us horror fans who have become accustomed to, we hate when the movie's scare sequences are only dream sequences because there's no real, outside of Nightmare on Elm Street where it's coming into the real, there's no real stakes or affectation that comes from a dream sequence. And we don't like jump scares because they're always, being laid in with really cheap tricks and whatever. For a movie to come out in 2024, a big studio horror sequel, and be a jump scare laden every single scene, nightmare, dream logic, are you in the real world, are you not? And it's about a pop star. It's about a pop star's comeback, and it turns into this kaleidoscopic, nightmarish, dreadful, but still really fun, and because it's a pop star, poppy, modern horror experience. And I think we can go long on Hereditary and the kind of depths of dread that it pulls you in, and how vulnerable and naked it's willing to get with you, and just saying, like, look how ugly and terrible this whole situation is. This is really the worst thing that can happen to an actual family that actually exists, is to lose, the matriarch, and then to lose the daughter in this horrific way. Like, but Smile 2, its secret, for me at least, was we're just going to create a series of haunted house sequences. It's the Carnival Funhouse that for some reason just keeps working and just keeps getting onto your skin and just keeps surprising you. And the mirror is there, and the owl that's going to come out from the corner is there. You've been to this funhouse before. Matter of fact, you recently went to this funhouse and it was called Smile 1. Like, you kind of know what's going to happen here. But the way in which Parker Finn, the writer-director, subverts the conventions of a dream sequence jump scare to consistently deliver you new ways of doing it, it was inspiring. Of course it was inspiring. It's inspiring anytime that you watch a movie that's funny and you're a comedian. It's fun. It's amazing anytime a movie can make you scared and you're interested in being scared. But just the way, particularly, that he decided to make a movie that, for horror fans, just feels like one long "don't do this," based off of the conventions that we as a horror community espouse and love and swear to. And, to just every scene kind of rewrite the rules of what can be scary to this audience. It was immensely fulfilling. And it's just another lesson of, like, you really don't know. You'd be sitting there writing a 2-hour-long dream sequence with jump scares and think that you're cooked. And it ends up being one of the great horror films this side of The Ring, or this side of Saw. It's, this side of The Conjuring, whatever you want to say. It's an amazing experience. And I think that you guys should both watch Smile 2 tonight. I've decided that's the movie that you're going to watch together. And,
fantastic.
And don't worry about going to the bathroom or going to get a coffee and coming back. There will be a jump scare as soon as you sit down in Smile.
Okay, perfect.
That's the whole point.
Nolan's been pushing Smile 2 for literally since, I think, the day it came out.
I mean, talk to Eli as well.
How much are they paying you?
Eli back
how
into
much,
it, but
Nolan,
Eli and I
Nolan,
are two of the biggest acolytes.
How much is Smile 2 paying you? Just be real.
0. I have no relationship with Paramount. Although I wish I did. I have a cool Paramount sweater in my closet. That's the only real association of Paramount Pictures.
Did they make Smile 2 merch? Is there merch that we can get you or anything, or is that?
Boy, did they! I mean, you could. Honestly, the pop star of the movie, Sky Riley, like, she probably has her own merch.
That's great.
Like, in world with the film and in conversation with the film. I don't have any, because I think me having merch would just further kind of, there's some weird, like, is Nolan being paid? Are Nolan and Eli being sponsored by Paramount Pictures? I think if we had merch, it would definitely blow our cover.
I get
For
that.
now, we're just fans.
Yeah.
We're just super fans of what Smile 2 is.
On a serious note, I do really appreciate it. And the way you speak about film and have spoken about it throughout this episode, but also just in our conversations that we've had. And I always am very grateful and inspired just in talking to you. And it's always refreshing in a sense to speak to someone who, like, truly passionately cares to the core about this stuff. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Of course, it was my pleasure. If I can do one last thing to plug, something that isn't Smile 2, it's go out and go to the 50/50 Horror Festival. If you're listening to this, like, We've got people
yeah.
here that I'm talking to live that are sitting there, and actually, I couldn't believe this. This is the cynical part of me when Luke told me that he sits there himself as the bigwig who helps run the festival and watches every single short. Like, I just couldn't believe that when I first heard it. You have hand-picked, curated, scary experiences in short form coming to you. I suggest you go see it. I suggest you go be scared, have people pop out at you all night on the haunted trail, and laugh and be scared and be with your friends and bring a date even if you want to. You know,
yeah.
horror always works on those first
we
two
might have
situations.
Couples have met at 50-50.
Yeah, they have. I think, Nolan, we could dress you up as the tree this year, maybe. Put you in the corner.
Would love that. Would absolutely love that.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Of course,
couples are meeting from 50-50.
I know.
That's what a relationship is. It's 50-50.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Are Arthur and Andrew doing okay down there? Can we just get a quick temp check?
No, I think they're a little hot. I think I should get them out from under the desk at this point. Yeah. You guys have been
Andrew
really good,
overheats
sitting down
pretty
there.
quickly, so we should probably.
He does. Oh, doesn't he?
Water.
Well, you're telling me. I'm seeing him right now. He is sweating.
Yeah. Damn.
But yeah, thank you guys
I'll let you take care of that.
This conversation.
Yeah, really fun. Really fun.
Thank you, Nolan. Go watch the recap of the World Cup. I've been watching this whole time.
Okay, great. Well, don't tell me who wins, and I won't tell you what happens at the end of Smile too.
Yeah.
That's our deal.
We're never going to tell you who wins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, guys.
All right, man.
See you, man.
Thank you, Nolan.
Did you learn something? I'm like your mom. Did you learn something in this episode? I hope so. Or not. That's okay. Thanks for hanging. Make sure you follow us at the 50/50 Fest on Instagram. And give us 5 stars, because why not? Why not? Subscribe. Why not? You know? Why not? Okay, bye.